For the past several days, Trump Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt has been hosting private Q&A sessions at the White House exclusively for deranged MAGA influencers. And today's was by far the most disturbing because the recurring theme for the questions and the answers was whether Trump would go after President Obama, Hillary Clinton, and even Fox News for their unflattering polls about Trump. In other words, would Trump be pursuing retribution? It's really disturbing stuff. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, again, Donald Trump seems to be seeking to weaponize right-wing alternative media, giving them favors, inviting them into the White House press room, people like Tim Pool and others, and then hosting private sessions exclusively for them. And again, it was pretty weird, cultish stuff at the beginning, but now it's getting truly unhinged and dangerous, as you will see from the questions and from the even more disturbing answers from Karoline Leavitt, who seems to be flirting with the notion of Trump going after his political opponents. We'll start with this clip.
Thank you for giving me the honor to be able to ask a question and provide some transparency for the American people. Speaking of, I wanted to reference the election integrity. A lot of people in America are questioning if there's any possibility that we could see further investigations for anyone that could have violated our election integrity rights. And more importantly, so is there any possibility for names such as Barack Hussein Obama, Hillary Rodham Clinton to ever just possibly get investigated for any of these, questions from the American people, any of the wrongdoings they might have done?
Well, it's refreshing to actually hear a question on election integrity because the legacy media would never ask such a question. They're so out of touch with where the American people are on this issue. And Americans, you're absolutely right, want to have trust in our electoral system. Without free and fair elections, you cannot have a free and fair country.
Thank you.
So, again, I want you to think about this. Trump won the last election. President Biden conceded, or Vice President Harris conceded. President Biden committed to a peaceful transfer of power. There were no insurrections, no attempts to overturn the results of the election, thus demonstrating the vast moral and intellectual superiority of elected Democrats over their Republican counterparts, number one. Number two, this guy, Dom Lucre, I think is his name, doesn't have any evidence that President Obama or Hillary Clinton engaged in any sort of like election integrity violations, and he doesn't even offer any proof. He's just like, listen, election integrity, that'd be a predicate to investigate people, and are we going to investigate specific people about whom I have no evidence that they violated that law? And rather than Karoline Leavitt say, okay, well, actually, we have no evidence that President Obama or Secretary Clinton engaged in any sort of, election fraud. If you have that evidence, please bring it to me, because, of course, we don't like these people. But no, we're not going to open investigations into our political opponents for no damn reason. Rather than respond that way, instead, Karoline Leavitt again flirts with the notion. Oh, so refreshing. That's great that you would ask that question. We need to have, faith in elections. And the only way you can do that is if Republicans win them. Like if Republicans win them, then the election's good, right? And if Democrats ever win for any reasons, then obviously it's like bad and they cheated. Yeah, pretty disturbing answer or non-answer, depending on your perspective. But again, not shutting it down explicitly, really gross. Here's another clip.
So much for hosting this. Really appreciate the opportunity to come in here and ask questions of you guys, and appreciate the president giving us some time of yours as well. On a follow-up on Dom's question, I still have a ton of my audience that is still asking questions about Hillary Rodham Clinton and the fact that it came out that her and the DNC funded the Steele dossier, which then led to a Crossfire Hurricane and all the FISA abuses that went against President Trump leading up to the 2020 election. Is there, you don't have to spill the beans, but is there something? Is there somebody still looking at it? We just want to know that it's not dead in the water, that Hillary's not just off scot-free after knowing what her and the DNC did leading up to the 2020 election.
It's a great question. Absolutely understand and agree with why you're asking it, but I would want to let the president weigh in on that front. I haven't discussed it with him, to be honest with you, but certainly we can ask him and get back to you.
All right.
So again, the recurring theme is, will you go after political opponents? Now, there's no evidence that Secretary Clinton engaged in any sort of malfeasance regarding the Steele dossier, number one. Number two, any sort of investigation into Donald Trump. Again, this has been investigated, and the investigators have been investigated under the Trump administration to hell and back by Senate Republicans, by House Republicans, and they have produced no compelling evidence. I will also note that the Steele dossier was not the only predicate for the investigations into Trump, so that guy is just lying out of his ass. As a matter of fact, even the Inspector General report, John Durham, I think the Durham report, indicated that there was a basis, the Steele dossier notwithstanding, for investigating Donald Trump's connections to Russia. So the facts clearly contradict this man. So now we have someone really interesting, Eric Bolling, formerly of Fox News and Newsmax, and he's got a particularly unhinged question when you consider who Trump is, who Karoline Leavitt is, who Eric Bolling is, again, formerly of Fox News, and who Fox News is. Consider this.
Will Trump sue Fox for their methodology in polling?
Two great questions. Let me hit the first one first. As for CBS and the White House Correspondents Association dinner, it was laughable. They gave an award to a journalist for talking about Biden's mental incompetence. He wrote a story about it years after the American people knew that story to be true. Didn't take much, just 2 eyes and 2 ears to realize that Joe Biden was completely inept, was unfit to serve as president of the United States. And nobody in the legacy media, nobody in this city wanted to talk about it. In fact, I recall being on President Trump's campaign and calling out Joe Biden's cognitive decline. And we were accused of manufacturing deepfakes. My predecessor accused us for manufacturing deepfakes from the White House podium when she knew and everybody in this White House knew the true status of Joe Biden's physical and mental fitness.
So Karoline Leavitt, of course, is either really dumb or just really dishonest, perhaps a combination thereof. There were many articles written about President Biden's mental state. There were questions about it. It was pursued exhaustively by mainstream and right-wing media. As a matter of fact, the Media Matters did a survey about this. There was, by I believe, a 10-to-1 ratio, articles written about President Biden's mental acuity compared to Donald Trump's, even though Trump's mental acuity was also questioned in poll after poll after poll, and even more so after President Biden dropped out of the race and Vice President Harris became the Democratic frontrunner. So this idea that nobody talked about President Biden's mental state or age is bullshit. You all remember those stories as well. The problem is they wish that they were talked about even more. It was talked about even more, number one. Number two, what you all were accused of is providing cheap fakes, not deep fakes. Again, Karoline Leavitt, too stupid or dishonest to recognize the difference, which is that you would selectively cut off a segment of where, oh my God, Joe Biden just wandered off and he's shaking hands with air, except when you actually increase the aperture or decrease the aperture of the shot, there's actually somebody that he's talking to. They just cut it in a certain way, not a deep fake, not AI fakes. You just selectively edited things to make President Biden look worse. But again, Biden's cognitive state was exhaustively covered. It was the reason he was pressured to drop out of the race, because he had a disastrous debate performance that everybody acknowledged. Liberal media, mainstream media, right-wing media, alternative media, everybody acknowledged. And there was a pressure campaign to get him to drop out, which was successful because he ultimately did drop out. This idea that nobody talked about Biden's age or mental acuity is nonsense. What people should be talking about now is Trump's, but we'll continue.
And the mainstream media allowed that cover-up to take place because they refused to dig for the truth. They tried to get the American people not to believe their own eyes. It is truly one of the greatest cover-ups and scandals in American history. And again, this is why we are welcoming independent journalists and social media influencers and content creators into the White House with open arms, because all of you in this
except liberal ones or progressive ones, just right-wing ones.
Room, and many of your colleagues in independent journalism talked about this online. Nobody gave you credence as far as the legacy media is concerned. And now they host cocktail parties where they're applauding each other and patting each other on the back for uncovering the truth. It was years later, and it's truly sad to see. But again, that's why we're making much needed and long overdue changes. As for the lawsuit against CBS, the president and his legal team fully intend to carry this lawsuit forward. The president put out a very strong statement in regard to that and fake news CBS this morning. And then as for the Fox News poll, president's right. These are fake polls. They overpoll Democrats. They underpoll President Trump's supporters. It's always been the case for media polls. They consistently underestimate President Trump's support amongst the public. That's why we don't really blink when we see them, to be honest with you. We're staying focused on the mission and moving forward. The president knows everything he's doing is exactly what he promised the American public he would do. And if you look at the key issues in the polling, the president is still ahead.
That's not true. That's so stupid. The polls are bullshit. We don't believe the polls. The polls are fake. Anything the polls have to say is total bullshit. Also, actually hear what the polls say just happen to be true. right? Again, too stupid or too dishonest to recognize that she's contradicting herself, or probably maybe smart enough to recognize that the dipshit she's talking to won't call her out on it. But if the polls are bullshit and if the polls are fake, then you cherry picking those things are irrelevant. That means the polls are wrong. So why are you citing them? Even if Trump was ahead on the issues in the polls, which he's not, he's underwater on pretty much all of them. In some cases, all of them, depending on the specific poll. But note the question Eric Bolling has. Will Trump sue them? Will Trump go after Fox News because the polls are fake? Because of the methodology? Well, there's nothing wrong with the methodology of Fox News polls or most major pollsters for that matter, because the fact of them, like Trump's side of this, he's like, John McLaughlin says that, only 34% of the people polled were Trump supporters. Well, that's because Trump supporters represent about, a third of the country, right? So this Trump didn't win a majority of the popular vote, and there are eligible voters who didn't vote at all. So you have Democratic voters, you have Republican voters, and you have people who didn't vote at all, as well as independent voters as well. So these things are weighted accordingly. But again, it's all about going after your political opponents. That's the theme of it. And note how Karoline Leavitt doesn't say, no, of course not, we're not going to go after. Yeah, we don't like the polls, we don't believe the polls, but of course we're not going to go after Fox News.
If I may, also misinformation, though, right? And maybe as detrimental to the presidency as what CBS has done or the New York Times is doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt about it. The president's spoken quite strongly about it. And I know he's made some phone calls to express his displeasure with it as well.
So there you go, right? Again, no, of course we would never go after media that we don't like. No, of course we won't go after pollsters we don't like. No. There's Eric Bolling trying to tee it up. Please, please, please go after Fox News and other media outlets that are in any way sort of critical of Donald Trump. Please, please, please. And Karoline Leavitt doesn't shut it down. She flirts with it because that is the authoritarian nature of the Trump administration. That's where we are, folks. Really unhinged Q&A session, and I expect it's only going to get worse from here. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.